What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Payne. Welcome back to another Summon Dragons 2 video. Again, guys, sorry for the voice. Still fighting COVID. Voice is getting worse, but here we are on Terrorizer's account. We're going to actually do a tier list today. So real quick, I want to show you guys. I've been playing with his account a lot more to test a lot of units out. He's as usual, very busy. So I've actually got the Phase 1 leadership board on the Worm Realm Clash. Was able to use his account to test out Loki. And do some other events and some other units. So we have a pretty comprehensive PVE tier list for you guys. And I want to thank Revs Balthus, as well as Pac-Man and Missile from the Discord servers for helping me put this together. They're veterans of the actual Eternal Evolution game, and their knowledge is invaluable. So I was able to put some of this together with my own spin on it. So let's go ahead and jump into this and talk a little bit about the tier list and what we're going to do. So this is going to be, again, primarily a PvE tier list, and I want to make sure everyone understands this is, of course, an opinionated tier list with some testing. At the same time, keep in mind, the way this is going to work is for free-to-play players, your job realistically is try to get as many A units as you possibly can. I'm actually going to go ahead and make one more tier. Let's go add a row above. We'll call it SS. Okay, so your job is to get as many A tiers as you possibly can while working on your S and SS tiers. SS and S tiers to max out is going to be very much whale territory, so keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and start with the D tier first. We'll get the lowest ones out of the way. Remember, these guys are here just for fillers. In case you need something and this is all you have, this is who you're going to use. The first one is going to be Blade. As a tank, he's not a very good tank. There are a lot better options out there. So if you have him, I mean, don't worry about building him. You're going to get Bruce in the beginning anyways. Bruce is a much better option, so focus on that instead. But of course, there is Faction Tower, so you can use him if you have to, but quite honestly, Leviathan is way better. So try to focus on Leviathan, but we'll get to that later. Vulcan as well too, another AoE here. Early on, going to be used to do Twilight Dragon quite a bit. So you're like, I'll show you right here. So when you go into the world, you're going to be fighting this Lost Valley Dragon, right? So right here, the Twilight Realm. So it'll be used early on for this battle, but after that, you really won't be using him very much. So really don't worry about Vulcan too much. Just use him for now and then reset him and get rid of him afterwards, okay? Let's see who else we have here. Sorry, give me one sec here. I'm gonna go through the list. I'm gonna show you guys the dragons as well while I'm at it, okay? So let me go here. We'll go to Emerald. Next up on the list is going to be Dragon Gallery. Emerald. There. Okay, Basic. So another warrior here. Decent overall, but again, you're going to have much better options. Like Envy is a much better option than Basic. So overall, Basic is also going to go ahead and get himself into the D column. So let's put him in there. And again, remember, I have a secondary account that I have some of these units for, so I've been testing on 2 accounts. And then we have Aoi over here. We're going to put him also in there. Not a very good mage. Overall, mediocre. So again, don't build him. You have better options. But again, for like things like Faction Towers, you may want to do it if you really need it, but not really good. Rinka as well is going to be promoted as a decent Twilight AoE magic. Again, not a very good unit. Wouldn't worry too much about it. Okay, so these are going to be your lowest tier units. Again, not the like the worst thing to have them, obviously, but there are much better options. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, moving over here now, we're gonna move over to Calypso. So C rank, not a bad hunter, pretty decent for damage, but overall outshunned by like Basilisk and Lunar, right? So an okay unit overall, like still decent to build if you really need one, but again, you're going to have better options very quickly, so don't worry too much about it. Now, Bruce is your first tank that you actually get. He's actually pretty decent. He is going to be in C rank. Remember, FTP, you want to kind of focus on A, B, and A and B as much as possible, but in this case, Bruce is okay for C. He's actually not bad. I think I would honestly move. I had Envy originally on C. I'm going to put him to B. I think he's actually a really good warrior. I'm going to put him here just for now because I want to talk about him real quick. But it's also pretty tanky, so not a bad DPS. If you put the proper gear on him, he can actually survive quite a bit there. So not a bad option at all. And then we have Wrath over here, who's also going to be a C. Makes shadow clones of himself, does pretty decent damage, but overall, Umbriel is a much better option for an assassin. So definitely go for that, okay? So moving over to the B section here. Let's start with the tanks. Let's go with Greed. So Greed is just one step ahead of Bruce for a couple of reasons. Number one, Greed has an AoE, which is nice. So does Bruce, but Bruce stands still when he does his damage reduction, which is kind of a bummer because other opponents are just moving around while he's doing this. While Greed actually does move while he does a special, he also provides himself a shield and also uses his max HP rather than his normal HP to absorb a lot of the damage that he takes, so allowing him to survive a really good PvP tank especially. Shah over here, decent summoning unit, better late game than early game, so if you are going to use him, make sure you build him for late game content. Just keep that in mind also, okay? So that's going to be one of the things that a lot of people on my wish list looked at. I want to shout out to Rev Balth for this one. He gave me the suggestion, but Missile also mentioned that Basilisk is better early on. So if you are going to go with him, Basilisk is better early, but Shah is a much better later unit for that for sure, okay? Let's see who else we have on my list here. So Lunar is actually pretty decent. Lunar is a good unit, especially for fights that involve multi-hit. So if we go back here to Deep Rock here, right here, Deep Rock Lair, actually a really good unit for this section, okay? So if you're looking for a multi-hit unit for Deep Rock, Lunar is actually really good, does decent damage as well. If you build crit and crit damage, can actually pop off pretty well. So really good free-to-play unit for mages, so highly recommend building that, especially for Deep Rock if you plan to use it. Inaris, not a bad summoning unit again, very similar to, not as good as Shah I find, but still a decent unit overall. So summoning units for the most part in this game are actually pretty powerful, so if you have that, use it. It's going to be one of those units that you're going to love. But again, we'll get outshined by Achilles. So if you have Achilles is going to be your #1 free-to-play unit for quite some time for damage dealing, especially from the summoner side of things. Okay, so definitely go with that. And then we have Umbriel, where are you? There we go. Probably the better of the assassins for the S rank. So highly recommend if you are going to build, especially for again, one of the stages here, the Sacred Ruins, one of the better units. You don't have very many options for Sacred Ruins, so of course you're going to end up using Umbriel, but overall does a pretty good effect in terms of power and damage, and decent survivability as well too for an assassin. So pretty good unit overall, highly recommend that. And then lastly, I think we have our first SS over here. Give me 1 second here. Let me go to my dragon list. Let me just go through this real quick. Our first triple S unit, I believe, is actually going to be here. Now this one I haven't tested. I'm just taking the word of the folks that gave me advice on this right over here. And that is going to be Odin, I believe. Yeah, Odin, there we go. Unstoppable Hurricane, so is a warrior as well. Unfortunately, just gets outshunned in every single way by Albing, and you'll see that very soon. But yeah, unfortunately, Odin, if you do have him as an SSS, unfortunately, as a warrior, doesn't kind of live up to the expectations of his class and his name. So Odin is actually going to fall under the B class over here. So where is he? There he is. As your first triple S in a B rank. Alright guys, there you guys go with your full B rank. So those are going to round up those classes. Now we're going to move over to A. Now remember, A is probably going to be the #1 focus area for free to play. As many S's in here will probably do you the most good. And then of course, work your way long term to get the S and SS as much as you can. So the A, we're going to start off with Achilles. As I mentioned earlier, he is the best summoning dragon for S-class specifically, and will take you very far in this game, and is actually much easier to rank up. If so, 100% focus on that. And evolving, is much easier than evolving someone like Loki, right? So definitely focus on that. Next up here on my list is going to be Surtur, who is a pay-to-win character at the moment for my server. So you can buy packages and stuff, but again, if you're looking for long-term, still a good tank, does a lot of max HP damage as a tank and can absorb a lot of damage himself, but again, very hard to acquire, but still gets outshunned by warriors above his class. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Who else do we have here? Let's see. Amaterasu over here, pretty decent mage, requires a lot of accuracy, good damage, but again, really hard to obtain. I believe the only way to obtain this currently is through the let me just double check. I think it's through the Worm challenge. So I think Terrorizer has a copy. Just let me go here and double check. Yeah, he does. There we go. So Amaterasu. So yeah, I believe the only way to get this is through that character at the moment. So again, overall good AoE damage, does damage per second. So you can see here, targets inflicted damage to all enemies with the radius with 6 seconds. This damage cannot be a critical strike. So like decent, like a good unit overall. Very similar to, I would even compare it to Ares in terms of like usability. They have different functions. Obviously, Ares does defense down with AoE. Amaterasu does a dot instead. So depending what you're looking for, but much more difficult to get. So definitely sits in A. Leviathan, probably the best free-to-play tank in the game. Highly recommend building him. Has immunity, has a good AoE straight line damage dealing move. The immunity is huge. It's like 6 seconds, if I recall, of survivability after taking fatal damage. So highly recommend building Leviathan as a free-to-play player for sure. Next up, Arjuna. Arjuna, really good hunter. A lot of crit, really good debuffs, has Hunter's Mark, great damage. So overall, like good on multi-targets, good on single damage as well too. So keep that in mind when you're building. Very cool unit to have, and also teleports. So that's kind of fun too. Neptune, next up, right over here. Good multi-damage unit, multi-hitting unit, I should say. Really hard to acquire. So again, but overall, not a bad unit, but still really hard to acquire. And also at the same time, is outshunned by a lot of the S-class triple S's. So you'll see there's a lot of multi there as well too, okay? We'll go next up, Zeus. Now, Zeus is interesting. So Zeus is very strong early on. And then, unfortunately, as you go up in the stages, we'll start to plateau in damage. Very good for Deep Rock, good for PvE early on, but again, when you start going like in the 27s, 28 stages and stuff, which is much higher, you start noticing his damage does plateau against some of his other competitors. So still a really good unit, good for free to play because you get him for free, and he will take you pretty far for a little while. But again, not something you want to focus on too much, because again, the S classes are going to be better if you can get a hold of them, okay? And then we have ourselves Phoenix. Now Phoenix is going to be one of your end game units for a very long time. So Phoenix is still probably the best healer outside of Horus. Horus we'll talk about very soon. And Aleph is also really good, so we're going to put Aleph in A as well. The only reason why Aleph is in A is just really hard to get, and by the time you get Aleph, you're probably going to have access to Horus, and Horus is just overall a much better healer. So we're going to put these two hand in hand, but I think Phoenix is probably the best option for most people anyways. And then we're going to go to Orion and Desponia, I think that's their name. Pretty decent summoning unit. Unfortunately, they share the same HP pool, so if one dies, so does the other. That part I don't like, but they do a lot of freaking damage, so that part's really cool. Ares, massive AoE, defense down. Your first actual AoE unit that you get as a triple S, so does carry a bulk of the weight for damage, especially for Twilight Dragon, but unfortunately falls off as soon as you get Ymir. So let's go over here. Speaking of which, there is Basilisk. Basilisk is really good unit, amazing hunter. Highly recommend building him. So if you have a need for a hunter in your party, Basilisk is probably going to be your best option with Arjuna as a free-to-play player. So these two here are amazing. And then remember, I mentioned Shaw on the wish list, but this is a end game unit versus a mid to end game unit. So Basilisk definitely takes a spot for that for sure. Okay, and then lastly, that rounds up your A. Now let's go over to S and then triple S. Okay, so the S, we're gonna have Horus over here. So you have Horus sitting there. Best healer hands down, nobody better. Tanky, has a shield, has an incredible heal, AoE heal especially, so does a lot of work. Fenrir as well too, amazing rogue DPS assassin, all the rogue assassin DPS. Really hard to acquire unfortunately, but when you do get him, he puts in work. He destroys backlines super quickly as well too, so keep that in mind. We have Ymir here, who is pretty much your best AoE unit in my opinion, for a little while until you get access to Loki, who's, I mean, not fully AoE but still good enough. But Ymir is one of the best units for Twilight for sure, and pretty much any other content out there. Super crazy DPS, a lot of attack speed, and massive radius for AoE. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then we have, I forgot who this is. Oh, is this Hades? This is Hades. Yeah, Hades is multi-target DPS. He's just out right now. So really good multi-target DPS. Amazing for Deep Rock. A massive amount of DPS. So if you're looking for good DPS for Deep Rock to carry you for a very long time, this is the option. Unfortunately, with Hades, he does come out with Loki, who's also going to be your first SS unit. Probably the best summoning unit in the game, hands down. Can do it all. All three of the summonings that you summon have different things they do. He does an insane amount of DPS. He's super tanky. Pretty much will carry your team through every piece of content, every single dragon fight. Loki's hands down the most pivotal character early on, and will carry you for a very long time until Bing comes out, who is probably going to be the best unit in the game, with vulnerabilities and insane amounts of AoE damage plus single target damage, and just almost impossible to kill. So there you guys have it. That is your full tier list. Remember, if you were a whale, S and SS is going to be where you're going to want to aim, with some A's in there as well too. For free to play, don't be shy. A's are really good as well too. This is where you actually going to have the bulk of your units, with SS and S being where you want to work on next. But this is going to be the roundup of the full list. If you have any comments or questions, let me know. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Again, big shout out to Rev, the guild Rev, and Balth specifically, Pac-Man and Missile as well for your help. I don't think Missile really wanted me to do a tier list because he's like, he hates tier lists, but you know, I think a lot of people have been asking me to do one. So just to help you guys out, this is it. All right, guys, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.